because because I actually become the first point of contact for these students, and the first question they ask is that, what is liberal arts and what is the purpose? Why general education courses? Why courses in so and so disciplines? So I've been hearing and addressing these questions over the period of time, at the same time making an attempt to make sure that we revise University 100 curriculum, which is a course offered to freshmen to ensure their integration in university. So we make sure that we do address liberal arts related questions, their concerns, growing skepticism, not just from them, but from their families. So these two points of experience have helped me come up with this presentation. So we'll just go through the presentation. There are three main points that I would like to focus. A little bit of context, some of the context that you're already familiar with. Some I will just reflect upon. And then point 2 and point 3 are more significant because we are going to set the context of the talk in South Asia. Because this workshop that I'm referring to, there were a number of institutions and education leaders from South Asian institutes, including India, Pakistan, Nepal, and some of the other South Asian universities. We attended this workshop together. And I was very amazed to see that how some of these challenges, despite the differences in our socioeconomic profile, were very common. And of course, there were differences in terms of uniqueness of the country's population, ideological differences, contextual realities. But some challenges were common, so I've put together those challenges for discussion. Last but not the least, a very rigorous protocol, which is based on the book by Dr. Riemers. He has produced this work. And interestingly speaking, this is actually a class project, which then slowly and gradually folded into something very huge and then implemented, and the results were seen. So a 13-step protocol will also be discussed, which is actually based on a very rigorous thought process and exercise and interaction with faculty, staff, students, academic support, resources, in order to realize that how can we pursue our liberal art education outcomes. So a very practical oriented approach. So to begin with, first is contextualizing liberal arts. So as far as contextualizing liberal arts are concerned, I think we all agree that the history has been in support of liberal arts without the term. If we look at Greek history, then we look at Roman history, some of the earlier philosophers as early as Aristotle, so they had inclinations of course, including different kinds of arts and different kinds of fields of study when they are looking at the concepts of democracy and citizenship and reasoning and logic in a society. Sorry, I think this is better. All right. So liberal arts education has gained its support and popularity over the period of time, but that does not mean that it did not have criticism. Liberal arts education has been under the criticism from a lot of societies, from a lot of educational approaches and philosophies, especially the philosophies and societies and contexts that actually focus on vocational preparation and specialized education. So they have contested the idea of liberal arts over the period of time for a number of reasons, but primarily the main concerns about the liberal arts in the past has been that it misses out somehow on the vocational preparation and the kind of workforce development that a specialized education can contribute. But nevertheless, liberal arts education has its own merits. Looking at some of the historic reasons that had been agreed by different scholars, intellectuals, and contributed a lot in terms of gaining support for liberal arts, are that we are dealing with a very different kind of globalized economy, where we expect the graduates not just to have specialized vocational preparation, but also skills that assist them to be very viable at their jobs. So for example, in the modern day workforce, we require people to have critical and global competence, that critical thinking, that rationale for improving logic, reasoning. It is all embedded into the philosophy of liberal arts. Because remember, one of the cores of liberal arts education is to promote critical thinkers. So we don't want a graduate who is very good in his or her field, but cannot critically think. So he does not only see his subject within the own subject paradigm, but he's able to, or she's able to create those cross connections. So cross connections, critical thinking has been very, very important to the philosophy of liberal arts. Thus, it gained support over the period of time. Second, soft skills, extremely essential. No matter how competent you are and how knowledgeable you are, the liberal arts education actually promotes a model which also requires you to have these competencies, people skills and people orientation and understanding people and being informed about people and their context and their realities, and then making decisions and analyzing your context accordingly. So this has also been very, very crucial in terms of understanding that liberal arts has contributed not just to the vocational preparation, but also to the soft skills. Last, in the discussion is traditional pedagogy. So liberal arts education, because it's very, very significant, and this has been addressed in different countries and different states, that why we have undergrad higher education programs. What is the effectiveness of an undergrad higher education programs? What are we doing with it? What kind of purposes we are trying to serve? What kind of profile of graduates we are looking at? So some of these essential questions have finally led to questioning the traditional teaching pedagogies we have. So again, one way of teaching, lecturing and specific modes of teaching, and then seeing them with and in connection to the available demands and the increasing and rising demands, and then reevaluating and readjusting the pedagogies accordingly. So a need and a change in the pedagogy and the change in the teaching strategies has also increased the visibility and increased the importance of liberal arts, because liberal arts, as you all know, promotes active learning, student-oriented learning, where student is the center. So again, the change in the teaching pedagogy has also increased that value of liberal arts all over the world. Having said that, next is the central elements. So the central elements are these three core elements that you will find very, very common to as far as liberal arts education is concerned. So these three central elements are, of course, interdisciplinary approach. So again, interdisciplinary approach where students learn methods and inquiries and ask relevant questions beyond their field and draw connections to support solutions. So it's very important, and as a central element and as a central principle, the interdisciplinary approach and multidisciplinary approach have been very, very cardinal to the spirit of liberal arts education. So again, where you see the student and the student's success, not just in a particular field, but its relevance and its connection and its overall connectivity with the other disciplines as well. So it's extremely important that a student does not only understand his or her own discipline, but also understands the relevance and connection that it draws with the other disciplines, and also asking questions that involves other disciplines, asking questions that basically bring two disciplines together. Now, just to quote an example, for example, when I was reading the literature on this, there's a very interesting example of climate change. So when we talk about climate change, and if you look at the kind of impact that it has created, so climate change, for example, could be looked at from a scientific point of view. But if you are any individual or any community is being affected by climate change and is no longer do farming, they have to migrate. So migration can cause psychological and social strain. So when they migrate and they overpopulate the urban centers, overpopulation is a problem. When they are overpopulated, of course, the job demands are not met. So again, unemployment is a problem. So all of that is related to not just one problem in a certain discipline, but a number of problems that it is going to be creating an impact on. So it's very important that we look at the global problems, we look at the problems in the community, not just from one perspective, but from multiple perspectives to understand its impact and its scale and its connection. Then, of course, broader curriculum of general education. So distribution requirements. So again, gaining competencies in communication, quantitative skills, again, acquiring knowledge of the world of social sciences, understanding the realms of physical world, physical sciences, life sciences, and at the same time, making sure that all these subjects are adding to the overall requirement of the student to understand the world better. So again, a general education requirement which makes a person value the human life, understand the evolving challenges, and provide effective solutions to it. So very, very purpose-oriented general education requirement is core to liberal arts education. Third is essential elemental skills. So critical thinking. So skills are again very important to liberal arts. So how effectively we can think about a problem, how effectively we can provide a solution, viability of solution, mobilizing resources, bringing them together, execution, learning, relearning, unlearning. So all of that is very essential to liberal arts. So these are three central elements of liberal arts education, which are very common in all liberal arts education philosophies across different regions. So again, European traditions and American traditions and Asian traditions. So all of these traditions have, again, a common goal, which supports three elements of liberal arts. Moving on. Okay. So I need to go back, one slide back. Oh, I'm good. Okay. So again, now, this is something which is very exciting to discuss because we are now trying to be more context relevant. So talking about liberal arts education in Asia, though it is actually perceived as a very, very American influenced style of education, but it has gained a lot of support and popularity in the other regions as well. We can also see the example of Asia. So for example, liberal arts initiatives in Asia had about 37% prevalence. Again, and this is the statistics which are true for 2016. Of course, the things would have changed after that. But till 2016, there was 37% initiatives related to liberal arts. Those initiatives included, of course, schools, different kinds of liberal arts programs, associations, alliances, initiatives to support liberal arts education in Asia. So there is, of course, a lot of prevalence of liberal arts in education, liberal arts education in Asia. And then when, of course, there is prevalence, there is testing, accepting, embracing of system, there are challenges. So there is, of course, resistance, there is challenge, perception-related challenge, acceptance-related challenge. So all of these challenges are also coming with the prevalence. So it's good that we have acceptance and prevalence, but at the same time, we should also be addressing some of the common concerns, some of the common questions, some of the common problems that this prevalence has actually created. Moving on. So these are some of the challenges that we discussed as a group in our workshop. And for the convenience of our understanding, I have divided these challenges into 5 different categories. Now, some of these challenges are very common. Some of these challenges are, some of these challenges also reflect in our experience when we are discussing liberal arts education in our own institute. But at the same time, our experience as Pakistan or as a Pakistani society may also contribute to a number of problems, number of issues, number of aspects that we need to address specifically. So these are some of the common challenges that we discussed. So first is related to self-challenges, self-related challenges. So how do we perceive liberal arts education from a student point of view, from a faculty point of view, and from a staff point of view? Remember, it's very important to discuss that the students who come to our institutions or they join any university for their undergrad program, they have very diverse profiles. So we have students who do not come from the same education systems. They come from different kinds of education systems. Hence, their proficiencies, their competence, their skills are very different. Their approach towards liberal arts, of course, is going to be very different. And especially when we talk about a typical profile of a first-year university student in FCCU or maybe another universities as well. So this is a student who's 18 or 19 years old, but still dependent on the family for most of the life decisions, including funding for their education. So which means that we expect them to be independent learners, we expect them to make their own decisions, we expect them to understand the world and world realities, but we also have to understand the kind of context that they're coming from, the kind of families that they're coming from, the kind of social groups that they have been part of, the kind of communities that they have been part of. So the first challenge is the student itself. So how do they look at liberal arts education? What kind of questions they have in their mind? There is, of course, a growing skepticism. Over the period of time, at least in my experience, when I speak to the freshmen every semester in the beginning of the semester, there is a lot of support, interestingly, about liberal arts, where parents are also come and have a conversation and show their trust in taking number of courses. But at the same time, there's a student and parent body who still feel that there is no need, and the education should be strictly vocational training oriented and career oriented, and these extra subjects, as they call it, will not matter. So again, this is the first challenge that we face with our students, especially about their perception and looking at the effectiveness of the liberal arts education. So sometimes it takes more than just one conversation. Sometimes it takes examples. Sometimes it takes them to look at our alumni body and the kind of things that they're doing. So that is something that we have to look at it from a student point of view. Then faculty. So faculty who are dealing with these students on an everyday basis also have their teaching loads, commitments, routines, practices, preferences in terms of their teaching pedagogies and whatever they teach. So how do they prioritize liberal arts goals for their courses? So again, it really starts with faculty's approach to liberal arts. So how do they make an intentional effort? Is there a conscious effort at the part of faculty to make sure that somehow their courses or their student learning objectives are contributing to liberal arts values? Looking at the curriculum and looking at and drawing the connections with mission and vision, drawing the connections with overall university values, and then drawing the connection with the liberal arts value. So that's very important, and it of course takes extra time. It takes training, it takes some kind of thinking, it takes some kind of effort, collective effort, individual effort at part of faculty. So again, how that effort is made, how they are facilitated in order to do that effort. So that is also one kind of challenge. And most of the faculty members in that workshop, including me, we worked on our courses, but especially from a liberal arts point of view was not really the case, at least until then. So it's very interesting after that workshop that we have to see that what kind of value, especially liberal arts value, we are communicating through our courses on individual level and then collectively from department and then from university. Then, of course, staff-related challenge. So in a university ecosystem, students, faculty, and staff members, all three stakeholders are extremely important. So staff members who also understand the values and the priorities toward liberal arts and become part of this eco and support system. So understanding the requirements, understanding, for example, if extra sources are required, special arrangements are required. So how do they perform in that ecosystem, support that system, and what kind of understanding they have towards it. So that's first self-related challenge. Second is institution-related challenge. Should I wait for the question? Okay. So second is, of course, the institution-related challenge. So institution-related challenge is institution as an individual institute, and also institute in terms of assessing itself in comparison to peer institute, influence of course, the associations and commissions. Now, for example, if we take example from Pakistan, we did not have a general education common policy until 2020. So, of course, the preferences of commissions, the preferences of associations, how do they think and prioritize liberal arts education? What kind of mechanism they set for institutions to sort of look at their liberal arts curriculum and audit it accordingly. So again, as far as institution is concerned, the assessments, effectiveness, priorities, take a lot of importance in order to understand that how an institution is looking at a liberal arts curriculum. Now for institution, assessments to determine the connection between the class and out of class practices are extremely essential. So do institutions have a program or have a system in place where they sit down and connect class practices and out of class practices, put them together and see how complementing they are to the spirit of liberal arts. So having a formal system in place, which is reworked over the period of time, drawing, of course, comparisons with the peer institutes, because in some countries, there are a number of liberal arts education. In our case, we had very few. So again, how do we draw those comparison? How that comparison helps us in improving our institute, and also making sure that the commissions and the associations provide that due support. And for some, countries, there is absolutely no support. So there is absence of commissions. There is absence of support of different associations to help universities understand the liberal arts education curriculum and adopt it. Then, of course, society-related challenges. So again, society-related challenges, I would say, again, looking at specifically from our society's point of view, where we have economic challenges, we have social challenges, we had floods, we had governments changing, we had everything going on. And then students are taking their decisions to join a university in between. So which means that we cannot isolate the student's decision to join a liberal arts program. So his decision or her decision to join a liberal arts program will be accompanied by all these factors. So of course, family as an immediate institution, society, community, socioeconomic indicators, political situations. So all of these do factor to the decision to join a liberal arts program. And especially where in a country, and especially all over the world, how the jobs are being the people are being laid off, the jobs are shrinking, job markets are shrinking. So sometimes the perceived threat also increases. So for example, when you are living in a society and when you're dealing with the students, and especially in South Asian context, where socio-economic indicators are really volatile, so it really affects the student's decision and their family's decision to look at liberal arts education as a viable solution, not just to their own life, but to the problems of community. So again, how a community builds a trust to support liberal arts education, or if they see that this is the right way to go and this is the right way to support our community problems and to solve our society problems. So that is something which is extremely essential in the overall discussion of liberal arts and its challenges. Global context related. There's a very interesting question that was being asked in the book, which basically deals with, these protocols and liberal arts exercises, that how do a student, and if the student identifies themselves as a global citizen. So again, that's a very essential question to ask, that are we preparing and equipping students where they feel that they're part of global community? And some of the responses were taken from technologically advanced countries, and there was a huge disparity. So again, 50% saying no, they do not identify as global citizens, and their problem are very, very community specific, and so is their orientations. And some believe that yes, they have a responsibility and they draw a connection to being a global citizen, and so on and so forth. So again, it's very interesting that to understand the global reality, where in liberal arts education, we talk about global competencies, we talk about global citizenship. Are we also creating that sense? Are we bringing them on the same level, especially the student body, where they feel that they're part of the global community and they have some responsibility and they have challenges to meet and they have solutions to provide? Last but not the least, market-related challenges. So nothing matters as much as the market demand for students. So you talk to any student who's in sophomore or junior or senior year, I think this is one question that they will ask, that, what is going to happen when I go out in the market? So I have values, I have ethical orientation, I know I have to be a good citizen, I'm a critical thinking, I can draw connections with people, I can understand people, I can appreciate inclusion and diversity. But how this all will be translated into my my job market? So again, how do you draw that connection, that gaining these values and securing a job in the market has to have some kind of compatibility? So when it comes to job market, especially the markets and the employers and the industries, when they're asking for students with specialized career and vocational set of courses that they have come up with. So of course, somehow the monetary benefits are not being viewed as effectively as for a parallel degree program where a student has only taken the subjects of his or her a particular major. So again, those market related challenges also hamper the perception of students, and especially increases the perceived risk towards the market. So they are being prepared about all these value, but are they going to get a job, or are they going to be good at their job? So I think these are two essential questions that the liberal arts has to find a way to answer, and especially we all in our individual institutes have to answer this question. Yes. Right. So this is this exercise that we all participated in, and this is a very interesting way, very time taking. It requires patience. It requires persistence and commitment from the university leadership to take it on and then execute and communicate it for university faculty to apply in their individual classes and courses. So this is a 13-step protocol which helps university leadership and faculty to see that how compliant their liberal arts curriculum is to the liberal arts goals, or do they have goals, or are these goals are clearly communicated? So these are some of the very important questions that these 13-step protocols ask. The core of these 13-step protocols is to come up with a prototype, an acceptable prototype where all stakeholders are on board, where expectations are very clearly communicated for student and faculty, where there is a procedure of revisions and improving in place, and of course there is effectiveness and evaluation which is considered by the end of the execution. So the first step basically is to establish a leadership team. So a team which understands the value of liberal arts outcomes and is willing to pursue those goals and translate those goals into real-time class teachings and learning practices. So first is that university leadership, or the first team that is being determined should have stakeholders who are relevant to a goal. So for example, if the liberal arts goal is about global citizenship, find 7 to 10 people who are utmost relevant with reference to global citizenship on campus. Those who can understand the value of the goal, change the practice, prepare a prototype, communicate and understand the problems related to the execution very clearly. Once that team is formed, the second is developing a long-term vision. So a long-term vision is, for example, for a liberal arts, one of the liberal arts goal could be global citizenship. So again, the global citizenship has to draw some support from sustainable development goals. It has to draw support from Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It has to draw support from global risk assessments and future challenges. So a vision which is very, very well informed, understands the practical and society related challenges, backed by evidence and science, has a reason and has a support before it is finalized for the teams to pursue. Then step 3 is framework. Knowledge, skills, and dispositions. Intrapersonal skills, interpersonal skills, ethical orientations, habits, all of them collectively and very well defined. What kind of skills we need? So we want a student who is curious. We want a student who asks relevant questions. We want a student who's able to resolve the conflicts. So very, very clearly communicating these skills and ethical orientations and dispositions that we want from our graduates. Then step 4 is audit the existing curriculum, see where the gaps are. Now, interestingly speaking, this protocol does not discourage the existing practices. It just asks the existing practices to be altered in order to be more accepted for liberal arts education program. Paul, can you move? Design a prototype. So a prototype which is well informed, worked by a team, has very clearly a very clear framework of dispositions and skills. And then that framework is now in this prototype. Typically, a prototype can look at a number of units related to a liberal arts goal. Then, of course, lessons, teaching practices in class, out of teaching practices, teaching practices outside class, and the profile of graduate. So that prototype has to match that profile of graduate that you're looking forward to. So again, if your profile of graduate matches the prototype, if it is being reflected in teaching units, if it is reflected in lessons, it is reflected in out of class interaction, in class interaction. So then the prototype could be trusted to execute. Then communicating. Some of the liberal arts prototypes are excellent and great on paper, but they are not communicated to the relevant stakeholders, and hence the results are not seen. So communicating to the faculty, because they are going to lead the execution. So again, a faculty is in charge of their lesson plan when they're in classes. So they execute the instruction. So again, communication of the entire prototype to them, gaining their confidence, receiving their feedback, and factoring it into the prototype is extremely important. Moving on to the revised prototype, after faculty communication, if it is felt that there are some revisions that are required, so those revisions are then incorporated. And finally, it is given a go-ahead for the implementation. Now, this team should also be responsible for monitoring the implementation. So, for example, have a very realistic timeline. Once the prototype is communicated to the faculty, how they are going to include that in their teaching practices, what kind of time they need, what kind of resources they need. So all of that should be given due consideration. Right. So again, monitoring and support. Support faculty where necessary, support students where necessary, arrange resources, taking stakeholders to arrange those resources for the students and faculty in the pursuance of that liberal arts goal. So for example, in this 13-step protocol, if any of these stakeholders, staff, student, university leadership, support staff, if any of these are not on board, of course, the execution is going to be compromised. So it's very important that the vision is communicated to all stakeholders and everybody is on board. So wherever the support is needed, that is provided. And again, financial challenges, fiscal challenges, routine challenges are then overcome once the university leadership and faculty is on board with this. Can we move on? So this is the last, evaluate the execution of the prototype, adjust as necessary and repeat. So again, this is not a one-time process. This is a process that requires maybe intervention over and over again, adjusting, readjusting, getting disappointed, but again, working on it again. So this is actually a very conscious effort and acceptance and acknowledgement that this is something which is going to take time. It is going to take effort. It will be very, very challenging. But to start with, this is a great exercise for us as an institution at FCCU. I think to adopt to that protocol and look at our teaching practices and our courses and see how compliant we are to the liberal arts goals, what liberal arts goals we have as an institution. So I think this is the way forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anam. I think that was a very good expose of liberal arts education. There was a question, and there was what is the epistemological underpinnings of liberal arts education? And to my mind, the best was that there is not one way of knowing knowledge and learning about knowledge and practicing knowledge. There are multiple views, and liberal arts education tries to prepare you for all those. I am happy if somebody else wants to also respond to that. I would like to open the floor with a comment that liberal arts education by the American Association of Colleges and Universities talks about liberal arts education promise. And when I saw that, I got thinking that we try to follow the American model. That is a part of our NECHE requirements. But when we say we try to follow the American model, it's actually in a way where we are trying to understand the whole scale of what liberal arts education entails. And like Anam said, it's largely about a general education focus, which we all know is there, which equips you for a broad spectrum of knowledge and skills. And then, of course, it's also market related. But at the same time, two important components that is how do you figure your courses and how do you make them relevant to your content so that they are not removed from the global reality, and that will be your challenge. For example, I can clearly see that when you're devising your curriculum, there was a time when in the sociology department of sociology, a course was offered on ageism. And my question was that ageism is not our issue. Ageism is, of course, an issue because we need to know about it, but it is not the contextual reality of our country. We are more worried about, I think, more than 80% of our population or 60% is under the age of 30. So what about dealing with youth and adults, young adults? And that is a course that probably would make more sense. I'm not saying ageism, course on ageism doesn't. So our issues are different. Hence, our curriculum that we tackle, our market is different in our local context. And so the skills and the courses that we tackle should address that. Having said that, I leave the floor to you all. I see that some of you have made comments. I would especially, there's a Anam Mustafa, what are peculiar hurdles or biggest problems in liberal arts educations as a South Asian? Anam, if you would like to answer that.
I think because my orientation has always been very, very student-centric. So I think the biggest hurdle is to take our students on board. Because if they don't see the value of a liberal arts degree, no matter how good our teaching practices are, no matter how well-informed we are about the student life and well-informed about the other aspects of education. I think this understanding the student's perspective, especially with reference to liberal arts, is very, very important. And I said that it earlier as well, that it takes more than one conversation. So sometimes you, of course, tell them that what liberal arts is and, what is it about and what is going to do to you once you graduate with it. But I think a consistent effort over the period of time where our courses somehow the other also addressing the same for our students where they could see that value, because I think this is where the biggest vote of confidence is in terms of liberal arts education. So of course if our students understand that value, and as I've already spoken about, it's very, very challenging the kind of profile of students that we get, the kind of diversity, the kind of disparity of skills that we see, and bringing them on board to understand that there is a system which has a value for them, which just is not only for these 4 years, but of course is a way beyond. So that's where I think the biggest challenge is.
I just want to interrupt if I'm allowed, ma'am, please.
Mustafa, please, you wanted to say something.
I just want to rephrase my question. Actually, it's not about what is the biggest problem according to us or here. I just want to know that what the other fellow faculty members told Anam during the workshop, like from India, from Nepal, and from Bangladesh, and from other countries, what they were sharing at that time, according to their context. So we might be able to learn something from their problems as well.
Anam, what at the conference where you were, what were some of the other issues of South Asian institutions?
Right. Some of the very interesting examples that I remember when we were discussing about, we must have a capstone for a liberal arts degree where everything is sort of converged and students see the connection. So we got a response from our different communities. Now, within liberal arts, the preference of the liberal arts goals varies from community to community. We remember there's this gentleman who was in India from a very not so known city. They have a very small setup of liberal arts education, and their liberal arts education is very, very social responsibility oriented, because they do understand that they have to provide a degree and they have to provide a program that suffices the need of that community, which is understanding social responsibility, building community connections, and then some universities also has discussed their orientation towards liberal arts. So, for example, there was another institute which discussed that how they're primarily a public health institute, but how they find it important to include liberal arts in order to understand make students understand the system of public health. So primarily they were a public health university. They have their public health curriculum, but they wanted liberal arts to be included in order to make sure that their graduates are relevant. So I think these two examples right at the top of my head I find very relevant when we actually see that how the system is fulfilling the need of an individual graduate and to the relevant and immediate community that it is being part of.
Okay, does that answer your question, Mustafa? I see that there are a lot of in-person participants, and I would be very happy if one of you responded. I think, Musarat, you walked into my office yesterday talking about how there was a need to contextualize, and I thought you gave a very good brief about that. Would you like to elaborate?
Ji, thank you.
Musarat Shahid in
Yeah,
one
yeah.
of the, okay.
So I'm here, Dr. Oksana. Thank you very much. Thank you, Anam, for a very informative session. I have two concerns. Number one is I'm sure that everyone in this room and on the Zoom link are familiar with the debacle that happened with ComSats University. And I think that needs to be addressed because something that was taken right over from the net and not adapted, nothing was, I don't even think that the teacher even read what he was giving to the students. So I feel that it is the responsibility for us as teachers to contextualize and to adapt and to make whatever we are teaching relevant to the students. And I think liberal art enforces this. How does one do that? How does, so monitoring and support unit, I think that should be doing it, but I don't know if that happens here at FC, number one. Number two, my question is about interdisciplinary approach. Now, I am myself an IB trainer, and I have been trained according to the IB MYP curriculum. And I feel that, service learning is part and parcel of that IB curriculum and in the liberal art. And when you said interdisciplinary, you were talking about the students and how they make connections. How I have learned the interdisciplinary is where teachers sit down and they plan the courses where 2 or 3 courses are integrated, and then the 6-week plan goes on or whatever. That was in schools. Here it could be different. So could you please answer this?
I'll take the first question first, which is related to this incident that you're citing. Absolutely. I think one of this first challenge, which is self-related challenge, is actually about that. So when we talk about faculty and the kind of commitments they have, the kind of expectations we have from the faculty, what do we expect faculty members to do? And of course, we want faculty members to show integrity. We want faculty members to show responsibility. So all of that is essentially liberal arts education. No matter what happens, if you are not liberal arts informed, you cannot translate the same to your students. So if you feel, if there is a disconnect, if you feel that you are not responsible, but your students are accountable, I think that's where the problem lies. So even if the current faculty, and this was the case in the workshop as well, most of the students who were sitting across the hall were not liberal arts graduate. I was the only exception. And most of the education leaders were not coming from a liberal arts background. So I think that's where the disconnect is, but that disconnect has to be realized by the institute and provide necessary training accordingly. There was a similar example where this faculty member, he was citing his experience, and he said that, though we are a liberal arts institute, but there's a lot of focus on standardized curriculum. So if 4 teachers are teaching the same course, even our lessons have to be very, very similar. So again, there is no intellectual liberty and all of that. So coming back to your question, I think the realization that the faculty needs training in terms of understanding the value of liberal arts, what it, and then of course their decisions and their daily life dealing, their conduct can do to the students and to the community overall. So this is all liberal arts. So again, the effort has to start from the faculty. It's a very unfortunate case that we do very rigorously and very religiously communicate to our students that, these are the values, there's something you're supposed to do, this is something you're supposed to learn. But the exercise has to start from us. So that is why faculty was actually related as a self-challenge, that as faculty members, do we sit down and understand that, are we informed about our contextual realities? Are we informed about the sensitivities that student has? Now, for example, this particular incident, of course, has a lot of sensitivity in terms of religion and its interpretation. So are we informed about those realities? And if we are not asking this question, I think both faculty and institute are accountable. So that's one. Your second question was... Absolutely. I think the interdisciplinary approach, from what I understood from my experience, is for the students to draw the relevant connections. But you are saying that, of course, the teacher has to sit down. Now, this book, if you go through it, which is also Dr. Rusana has given the link of, it exactly does what you are saying. That it, for example, for global citizenship, 10, 60 lessons that are across grades should be communicated, and the faculty has to come together. So, for example, for climate, change, or for poverty, or for clean water, there should be curriculums that are addressing the issue across disciplines. So this book actually deals with that problem, where the faculty has to come on board and make an intentional effort to sort of build a curriculum that allows interdisciplinary inquiry. So, I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, may I add, something, that across disciplinary approach from an epistemology point of view would be difficult, because in way of knowing and nature of knowledge, students and faculty have a different concept for sciences and for humanities and social sciences. And so the challenge is how to make us cross-disciplinary, and that I would leave, as a question in all your minds, that when you bring the two together, how do you mesh them? And that is the beauty of liberal arts education, because the multiple ways of knowing across different disciplines may differ, but how do you bring them and collapse them together to a whole? And that's the beauty. Irtaza, you made a comment about how about we are losing the traditional wisdom in the bigger picture of globalization. And I think that's true. The challenge is how to float with the global community while retaining your contextual sensitivity and being aware of it. And it is becoming an increasing challenge in this world where knowledge and communication flows so quickly. So these are questions that we all as faculty have to, sort of balance. And Sabah, but I suggest that we should talk to students openly and make them understand by answering their queries and basic concept of the system. Absolutely. But again, sometimes when you're very open about talking about things. Will somebody's sensitivity be so alerted as to create an alarm or an issue? And those are things that you as faculty will be dealing with all the time. You do not know across a whole spectrum how you are working through things. And I think that's to be thought about. Anam, your session was so comprehensive. So many thank yous to you on on the from the chat. Sidra is saying liberal arts education can cultivate a well-rounded, let me read, it's a long, why don't you talk to it, Sidra?
Ma'am, sorry to cut you out. Meanwhile, can I start the Zoom polling? So that
Please do.
okay, I'll do.
Sidra, you have really put on a whole global perspective. If you go to the Reamer 60 pages that also Anam cited, they actually talk about a whole spectrum of global SDGs that need to be considered while making your courses. And I think that's a very powerful way of keeping in touch with the global world. G, your polling, please, before you go, because I see we have come down from 55 plus online to 48 now. We would strongly request you to please do the polling and respond to that. And also if we could have in person respond to their comments so we can have a sense of how to proceed. If there are any comments about the conduct of the session, we will welcome an email to our office. Please do that so we make it more meaningful to you the next time round. G. We still have only 32 who have responded. We usually don't get the response. And Anam, a lot of them are saying we did learn something new that is more than 97% and satisfied. So that's a very powerful poll and a very powerful result.
Thank
We
you
will
very
end
much.
the poll, yes, and share the results. You can see them. And that says a lot about your expertise and competence.
Thank you.
Sidra, would you like to talk about
joining.
what you said? Unmute. Mustafa has something to add also, but I'll give you an opportunity, Sidra. Just brief info what you're saying. You're talking about the SDGs, are you? You're talking about the 14 SDGs, I think. Yeah, I think she's not responded or she cannot unmute probably. Thank you. Okay, yes, Sidra, those are SDGs. And I think the way to go for liberal arts education and to become more strong is to incorporate SDGs. That's the way to go, but not forgetting the liberal context. There's some more messages. I have no idea why they are disallowed by the host. I said them unmute, you cannot unmute. Anything else? G. Mustafa, you wanted to add something?
No, ma'am, I was just clapping to conclude the talk.
Absolutely. A big clap actually to Anam for a great session. Anam, you are always amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, dears. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Okay.
Hello.